This is episode 71, and in today's episode, I'll be sharing with you how your unhappy marriage is draining you at work and at home. Now, before we dive into this topic, I want to let you know that what you will be hearing is a recording I did for my YouTube channel. If you haven't checked out my YouTube channel, you might want to do so, and when you do, make sure you subscribe to the channel, because I know that I will be making the recording into this podcast. You'll hear me mention the podcast there as well. Now, if you are struggling in your marriage, like other couples or spouses are in theirs, you might be making some of these mistakes that you'll hear today. And you also hear, why is it others who may not be experiencing the outcomes you are, what are they doing differently? More of those things I'll be talking about in a few moments, so stay tuned.
Hello and welcome to the Happier Marriage Podcast, a podcast for spouses longing to have a happier marriage so they can feel more connected, desired and supported. Now, to start the show, here is your host and Sherpa, licensed marriage and family therapist and certified relationship coach, Kingsley Grant.
Thanks for joining me today. I'm very appreciative of you being here. This means a lot to me. Like I said, we're going to be talking about how your unhappy marriage is draining you at work and at home. Now, I'll be sharing with you the mistakes, the different results, the mistakes and the different results and behaviors of spouses who are in happier and fulfilled marriages versus those who don't. I'll also share with you what they do that either make matters better or make them worse. Also, you'll hear me use a few biblical references or references to God that unpack some of these ideas and responses. So with that said, listen with an open mind, because I guarantee you're going to hear a perspective I would say, never heard before. You don't believe that? Well, you've got to listen. Before I step back and let you hear the podcast episode for today, can I ask you to do me a huge favor? Would you please share this episode with one or two of your married friends? I would greatly appreciate that. So without further ado, let me get this podcast started. Let's dive in. And remember, this is audio from the video recording.
So, the big question is this. How is it possible that you have a happier marriage when you feel like you've tried everything? Your spouse isn't making an effort. You're exhausted. You feel like giving up. Or there's so much hurt that's taken place between you and your spouse. That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers.
Hello, Sparkin. This is Kingsley Grant from Happier Marriage Secrets, where we are on a mission to make marriages happier again. And if you are wondering why I refer to you as a Sparkin, it's simply because I believe you want to put the spark back into your marriage, or to put more spark into your marriage. And that is the reason why I call you a Sparkin. Now, let me begin by asking you this question. Have you ever felt like you are dragging at work or at home, like you just don't have the energy to do anything? And it's not because you are physically tired necessarily, but because of the weight that the state of your marriage has on you. It feels like you are carrying a heavy backpack full of rocks on your back. At first, the backpack wasn't too heavy, and you could easily carry it around. It was there, but it was bearable, right? But as you continue to walk, the backpack gets heavier and heavier. Eventually, you start to feel like you're just so tired and drained, right? Is that your story? Well, if so, I want to assure you that you're not alone. Many married spouses like yourself struggle with unhappy marriages, and it can take a toll on every aspect of your life. An unhappy marriage is like that backpack I mentioned, full of rocks, and it drains your energy, your motivation, and impacts your focus, your concentration. It makes it difficult to concentrate at work and to enjoy your personal life. And if you're going through that, you know what I'm talking about, right? You know exactly what I'm talking about even now, because this is what you're kind of feeling as I share so far. And so in this episode, this video, I'm going to talk about how an unhappy marriage can drain you at work and at home. And I'll share with you some practical tips for improving your marriage that will re-energize you both at home and within your work. Is that what you're here for, which I believe? So buckle your seatbelt. We're going to get there in a few moments. But before I do that, I want to ask you to make sure you subscribe to this channel and to engage by liking and commenting on this video that you're watching. These little things go a long way in helping this channel to grow and reach more people. If you have already done so, let me just say a big thank you. Now, as mentioned earlier, this episode that you're watching, and for those who are listening to the podcast, we're talking about how an unhappy marriage can drain you at work and at home. Now, in almost 2 decades of working with couples, 3 of the biggest mistakes that I see spouses make when they are feeling unfulfilled and are unhappy in their marriage is that they choose to communicate less with their spouse. They become less affectionate, and they put their energy into other activities, and unfortunately, sometimes into other relationships. Now, when married spouses are unhappy in their marriages, they often make the mistake of withdrawing from their partner. And in their mind, it's really their way of trying to avoid something. They may also communicate less, become less affectionate, and they focus on their energy, I mentioned before, in other places as well. And they do this because they think it is the best way to keep things from getting worse. And you would almost say on the surface that makes sense, right? However, this only serves to distance them from their spouse, and it also makes the problem worse. Now, that's what I've noticed with a spouse or spouses who are in unfulfilled and unsatisfying marriages. That's what they tend to do. On the other hand, what I've noticed with those whose marriage feels more fulfilled and feel happier is that they do the complete opposite when they are experiencing moments of conflict in their marriage. They know that conflict is a normal part of any relationship, but they also know that it's important to resolve conflict in a way that builds and strengthens their relationship, their marriage. And what they do this by doing what it is people who are in unhappy and unsatisfying marriages do. They do the opposite, right? They do the things that those spouses are trying to avoid, because what they do instead, they communicate openly and honestly with their spouse. The Kingsley, of course, because they're in a happier and more fulfilled marriage. No, but see, it's at a point of conflict. It's when they're in a moment where things are not feeling as happy and as fulfilled as they would normally experience. So it's not that everything is perfect. They're in a time of conflict, of maybe doubts and wondering, but they chose to openly and honestly communicate with their partner. They also do something which I think is so very important, and one of those things I highly suggest is that they take personal responsibility for their role in the conflict. They just don't blame and point finger. They know they have a role to play, and they start there. That is the place to start. They start with that. They also are willing to forgive one another. They walk in the forgiveness of their spouse. And so they're willing to forgive the other person. They also seek to resolve conflict in a way that's fair and equitable, meaning that they just don't believe that it's one side, right? And they want a fair outcome, a reasonable outcome, an equitable outcome where both persons are taking responsibility for their contribution to the conflict that they're now experiencing. When they do these things, they experience a stronger, happier, and even more fulfilling marriage, as you can just imagine. Actually, their relationship goes even deeper, right? More intimate, and they become even more confident, knowing that they can trust God even more, because their faith plays a very important role in them learning to forgive and taking, quote, the risk that they do in communicating openly and honestly. So they trust God for that, and now they feel like, having done that, they can trust God even more. And also their communication and conflict resolution skills, they can have more confidence in that, knowing that when something does come up, they do have the skills in their tool bag in which they can use to kind of navigate that moment. Now, as a result, when they navigate conflict in a healthy way and with the help of God, they experience a number of, I believe, significant benefits, which you can just imagine, including, as I mentioned before, a stronger and more fulfilling marriage, a deeper trust in God and in each other. They also experience an improvement in their communication and conflict resolution skills, as you can just imagine. They also experience increased happiness and satisfaction in their lives. And as you can just imagine, they experience more productivity, higher energy, and more motivation towards their work. They just feel like the environment that they have helped to create gives them that, impetus, that drive, that motivation, that fire, so to speak, to get up and go, because they created a healthier, and they feel better. They feel that they were a co-creator of the outcome in what they're now experiencing. The question now becomes, which of these two outcomes would you prefer to have? I can hear you say, duh, Kingsley. Of course. Who would not want the latter? Who would not want to experience stronger and more fulfilling marriage? Who would not want to have a deeper trust in their faith in God and each other? Who would not want improved communication and conflict resolution skills? Who would not want increased happiness and satisfaction and more productivity and energy? Who would not want that? Duh. Of course, that's what I would like. Well, I don't take it for granted that people generally really want that. They'll say they want it, but when it comes down to doing what it takes, like the person who is in a happier, more fulfilled marriage does, the work, they're leaning intentionally, they are willing to take their responsibility. Not everyone wants to do that. It's easier to blame and to shame and to degrade and criticize than to take responsibility. So not everyone's, when I ask the question, it may sound like a duh question, but really, I really have to ask, because if we want that, it's there for the taking, only if we are willing to do the work. So, not only are you saying, you might be saying what I just said, duh, Kingsley, but you might be saying, Kingsley, you just don't understand. You don't know my situation. You don't know my spouse. And you know what? You're right. I don't know your situation, and I don't know your spouse. But here's what I do. I do know this. I know that God is faithful. I know that God is still at work. I know that God can do the impossible things that we can't. I know that. And secondly, I know how I've helped spouses who are not experiencing happier and fulfilled marriages over the last 2 decades turn around their situation as they too can experience what happier and fulfilled marriages do, or spouses do. I've helped and I've seen it, so I know from experience, but also from my understanding of what God does when we allow Him to, but also our commitment and our faith and our trust in ourselves and our abilities and our skills and in our partners. As a marriage and family therapist and a certified relationship coach for almost 2 decades, and who have worked with hundreds of spouses, like I just said, I know from experience, who have had many successes. I'm not saying every single one of them did. Some did not, but I would say a majority have had. And myself have been married for 38 years and counting as of this recording. So I know what it takes to get you there. I know what it is, what I've done. I know what it takes with helping other people and seeing the results and hearing from them. So I do know that I may not know your spouse or I may not know your situation, and I agree with that. But I've just shared with you what I do know. And I do know if you do want to put the spark back into your marriage, in your relationship, then it's possible. It's possible. It all depends on how much you want it. You can continue to avoid and get the same results you've always gotten. And if nothing changes, my friend, nothing changes. But I believe that, as someone have said this, that, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at changes. If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at changes. And so what I'm providing to you and prescribing here is a change in the way you think, in your mindset, and with your lenses. Now, if you want to know more of how possibly I could help you, I have prepared a short ebook entitled 5 Mistakes That Are Killing Your Marriage. That are actually killing your marriage. And I provided some tips within that short ebook that I believe you can help you, and you can have it for free. You can have your own copy for free. Simply go to happiermarriagesecrets.com/mistakes, happiermarriagesecrets.com/mistakes, and secure your copy right now. Now, in this episode, we've talked about how married spouses who have happy and fulfilled marriages navigate conflict differently from those who don't, right? We've also discussed the benefits of navigating conflict in a healthy way. So if you're struggling to navigate conflict in your marriage, your relationship, please don't give up. Don't give up. There is hope for your relationship. As a reminder, you can start with some of the suggestions that I made in this video. You may want to rewind and go back and watch and listen to that. But in addition, I want to suggest some additional tips here. Listen to your spouse with empathy and understanding. Avoid blaming, shaming, or putting your spouse down. Be willing to compromise and find solutions that work for both of you. Seek to resolve conflict in a way that is fair and equitable. Take breaks. Take breaks from conversations that are going south, that are going down. Just take breaks. Disengage. Take time out. And seek professional help from experts such as myself. Because these are some of the things you can do to change the trajectory of your marriage, of your relationship. Remember, navigating conflict is a skill that takes time and practice to learn, but it's a skill that is worth learning, especially for those like you who are in a committed relationship that we call marriage. So by navigating conflict, in a healthy way, as we mentioned earlier, you can build a stronger, happier, and I believe a more fulfilling marriage. And I think by now you're recognizing that is true. So if you want to learn more about how to make your marriage happier again, not only do you get the ebook, but I want to suggest that you watch also on this channel a video I've created called How to Build a Stronger Marriage, where I share with you the Happier Marriage Renewal or Revival Roadmap that I have there for you. You can also find other helpful resources at KingsleyGrant.com, KingsleyGrant.com. And if you have never checked out the Happier Marriage Secrets podcast, you want to do that today. You'll find a lot of topic that I've covered, which I believe will help you in your journey. And you can access all the free episodes at happiermarriagesecrets.com/podcast. All the links mentioned, here's the good news, all the links mentioned can be found within this description that follows this video. So in case you missed any, you can always go there and get the links to what I'm suggesting. I hope you enjoyed this video as I did in presenting and bringing it to you. And with that said, my friend, I want to say thanks for watching, and make sure you subscribe, like, and comment on this video. So with that said, God bless, and I'll see you on the next one, which will be very, very soon. Okay? Look forward to seeing you there, and God bless. And there you have it, my friend. I hope you found this recording to be helpful. I would love to hear your thoughts. Our announcer will give you some final instructions.
We've come to the end of another exciting show, and if you enjoyed this podcast, 1, make sure you give this show a rating and review. 2, subscribe to the show to get all new releases. And 3, get your complimentary copy of the 5 Secrets to a Happier Marriage ebook at kingsleygrant.com/HMS ebook. Again, it's kingsleygrant.com/HMS ebook. See the link in the show notes. Do it today. Don't delay. Thanks so much for listening, and make sure you tell one other spouse about this show, or better yet, share it with them. Until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. May he turn his face toward you and give you his peace, both now and forever.